Well, hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Real Estate Investing. I'm your host, Sharon Vornholt, and I'm so happy you're tuning in today. My guest today is Ace Hagerty. Ace is a structural engineer and a Nashville-based real estate investor. He flipped his first house 9 years ago, and since then, he's flipped over 200 houses and inspected thousands of residential and light commercial structures. Ace has a portfolio of both long-term and short-term rentals, and currently he is developing from the ground up. Welcome to the show, Ace.
Sharon, pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm always, I don't know if you know this about me, but I have a long history with structural engineers because I had a home inspection business for 17 years, and they were some of my favorite people, because in that business, you need a voice of reason to come in and go, okay, this is nothing. This is, your client needed that leveling voice and not the, oh my God, the world is falling voice. So, I have a great deal of admiration for what you do, but I wanted to dive into how you got to where you are today. You're an engineer by trade, and that business, while it's kind of a companion business to a lot of things real estate, what made you become interested in making that transition? I'm assuming you did both, maybe did both for a while, or tell me how all that started.
Yeah, well, you hit the nail on the head. I am traditionally a structural engineer. I followed my parents' advice to become an engineer, and I did everything right. I have multiple degrees. I have a master's from UC Berkeley in structural engineering, and I was kind of the poster child of doing everything their parents told them to do, and I did it very well. And I learned very early in my career as a structural engineer that I enjoyed what I was doing because I was able to help people in a way that a lot of people can't help. Structural engineering is very specialized, and I learned even more so since I moved to the southeast part of the country that structural engineers, especially for residential work, are few and far between. And especially like anything else, there's a whole spectrum. There's good engineers, there's your traditional stereotypical engineers where they have almost zero people skills and just want to be stuck behind a computer and a desk. Yeah. And that is real. So I would say about 10 years ago, I was working for a contractor at the time. I was in a few years before that, I was in the office. I couldn't stand it. I had to get out. I just felt something inside of me that I needed to be outside more. Trust me, I like being behind a computer every so often, but I wanted to get into the field, learn more about construction, how things are put together, because I understood at that time that if I'm doing all this design work, it doesn't matter how pretty of a picture I can draw, it needs to be built. And I would get a lot of pushback from the contractors when I first started my career about, hey, this isn't going to work because X, Y, and Z. And I'm thinking, well, it looks pretty and it looks easy to build, but in reality, can it get built or not? So I ended up getting out of consulting after a few years and started working for a contractor. Now, that's when I was getting real exposure to how structures are put together. I started out working as a laborer, even though I had multiple degrees in engineering, because the lesson I learned there, and my boss at the time became a mentor of mine, and he told me, you have to be in the trenches with your guys. You have to lead from the front. And in this case, lead from under a house. And so I gained a ton of experience doing that. I learned how to lead guys by taking action. And I also learned how to build very well. So around that time, a buddy of mine, he was a real estate broker. He had come across a project and was like, hey, you're in construction. Do you want to flip this house? And all I knew back then about house flipping was from Chip and Joanne Gaines in Fixer Upper. That's all I knew.
That's it.
Yeah. And this broker was able to find deals. Back then, this was a couple years after the Great Recession, and people were still foreclosing at that time. It was like the tail end of that, but he was in short sales. So he was able to get a short sale deal together, which essentially just means you prevent the person from going into full foreclosure. It still hits their credit, but not nearly as bad. And so from that, we were able to get a house at a very good deal. And I came in with some of my own crew. I did a lot of what people call sweat equity. I was doing a lot of the work myself, nights, weekends, things like that. And within 3 months, because with a short sale, you couldn't resell the property for 3 months after picking it up. I got traditional bank loan because I had a W-2. We put the money down half and half, fixed it up, sold it 3 months later, and net profits, we split $90,000.
Wow.
And you would have thought at that time, I would have just jumped ship from my job and gone full-time into real estate investing, house flipping. But being a structural engineer, being very conservative, I just continued moonlighting and building up my experience, going to the local RIA, reading as many books as I could, and talking to as many people as I could to learn the ins and outs of this business. And so slowly over the next few years, I built up a few flips here and there, a few long-term holds, short-term. Airbnb was starting to really ramp up at that time. And I loved that business model. I loved staying at Airbnb. So I got into Airbnb pretty early on as far as my own portfolio. And that's really how I got started. And when I made the move, I was in California. I'm born and raised in the Bay Area. When I made that decision to move from California to Nashville, that's when I pretty much went full-time into investing. You had mentioned at the beginning of the show over 200 flips. That's really where I did the bulk of the work then, because I just jumped into it feet first. And funny story about that, real quick. When I first went into Nashville, I thought I was going to be Mr. Flipper Flop Nashville, because Flipper Flop Nashville was starting at that time. I ended up being a structural engineer for a few of their projects, but never got on the show. But that first flip, I thought I knew everything. I was like, I'm going to flip Nashville in and out. And I came in that first deal. I made so many mistakes because I came in cocky. I came in thinking I knew everything. And I ended up losing $35,000 on that first flip. Almost wasn't able to pay my wedding vendors 2 weeks before my wedding. Had no money, couldn't pay my vendors. And that was a very humbling experience. That's the first time I lost money in real estate. But like so many people say, that's the best education you can have. And that $35,000 loss just propelled my education and my ability to really lock things in and learn from my mistakes.
And we've all had things of varying degrees that turned out to be real life college education that we would rather not have experienced. But you said a few things in there. One is that you are uniquely qualified for real estate. I mean, there is so much people don't know about the structure of a house. They go in, they put Band-Aids on, and they put in a new kitchen, and then they go to sell the house, and then some much dreaded home inspector comes in and says, well, you got this big problem. And they're going, no, it can't be. I just spent $35,000 making it pretty. But that gives you an experience level that most people don't have. So you are really uniquely qualified in my book to do that. But you also said something about having a W-2 income, because one of the first things people want to do is quit their job, which means you've got no borrowing power. Nobody wants to loan people money that don't have a job. So I like to drive that point home. Keep your job. Just do the hard work and do this part-time until you've replaced your income, or you have a history where you can go in and show the bank, look, I've done these successful projects. Yes, I lost money on one, but the other 9, I made a lot of money. And they'll, I think, look more favorably on that as being transparent. We talked about that before the show, as here's my history, and this is me today. At least that's the way I think about it.
Yeah, I ran into a huge roadblock when I moved to Nashville, because I told myself I'm not going to get a W-2, which in hindsight, I could have worked for one of the structural engineering companies in town. There's some phenomenal structural engineers in Nashville and that area, and I could have gotten immediate income. I could have been able to bank finance. That's one of the things I learned very quickly in Nashville, was that money runs out. When it's your money, it runs out pretty quickly. And come to find out, I almost wasn't able to pay my wedding vendors. That was a fun learning lesson. And the cool thing about, keeping your W-2 and doing this on nights and weekends, like you can still go to your local RIA and learn. You can still read books. You can pick up projects here and there and get that real world experience. Start your LLC, start your business. And then when you have 2 years of track record, that's when banks are going to start looking at you again. So think of it this way. I'm going to have 2 years of training. I'm going, 2 years goes so fast. Exactly. I'm going to go to these RIAs. I'm going to make these relationships. I'm going to take these classes. I'm going to read these books, and I'm going to take on these projects. And it's always great when you start smaller, because my mentor used to tell me, like, make mistakes when the stakes are small, because if you're making the same mistakes when the stakes are big, then these are going to be big mistakes. And I've made so many mistakes. I like to tell people, I can tell you everything not to do in real estate, because I have made so many mistakes. That's why I can say that I'm an expert, because I made every single mistake. It feels like I almost, ruined my wedding because of it.
That's a hard lesson for people to learn. I think that's one of the reasons so many of us started things like blogs and podcasts and little coaching programs, was out of the need to save people from making the same mistakes that we made. Heck, everybody's made the mistakes. But if you can save somebody from doing this dumb thing that you did, then it's a win all day long. So let me ask you this. You've done over 200 flips. Was fix and flip, so that was your original strategy? You didn't wholesale, or you eventually went into buy and hold, but did you wholesale, or what did that look like in the beginning?
I tried wholesaling quite a bit. I learned, one of the big lessons I've learned over the years is stick to your areas of strength, and then find the people that can supplement your areas of weakness. And so I've always aligned myself with people that are good at the front end and the back end of a project. So finding deals, picking up deals, and then selling deals as well. And I'm just really good with my background, my expertise. I keep telling people there's really not too many people with my kind of pedigree when it comes to not only knowing how to look at and evaluate a structure, but knowing the right processes. I'm building from the ground up right now. And that was a whole nother learning lesson. I thought, oh, I've done additions, I've done rehabs, gutted houses. This is going to be pretty simple. All I need is some underground utilities, a foundation, and some framing, and I've done everything else. Well, that was not completely correct. And I learned so much more from doing ground up development as well, being the general contractor and the project manager and all of that. But I never wholesaled. I tried. Don't get me wrong. I tried, and marketing, sales, definitely not my forte. I spent a lot of man hours doing that, and little result. And I just had to look at myself in the mirror and be like, okay, where do you add the most value? Where are you the strongest at? And the great thing about getting partners is now you're able to do more deals. You're able to do bigger deals. I was able to do the majority of those flips because I aligned myself with two guys. One guy was phenomenal at picking up deals, finding deals. Another guy was phenomenal at raising money. And I was the operations guy. We got the projects, we funded them, I would flip them. And then on the back end, we did turnkey rentals. So we'd get them rented and we'd sell them to investors, out-of-state investors. And with that kind of setup, having the three people that were just phenomenal at what they did, we ramped it up. The first year we bought 75 houses. The next year we bought over 100 houses. And we just scaled that so fast and so well that just in a few short years, and COVID hit during this business, and we just kept pushing forward, forging forward. And it's been a great experience. It definitely opened up my eyes to the ability to scale and do some really phenomenal things. But as far as like things like wholesaling and talking to potential sellers and things like that, I've done it, and it was very uncomfortable for me. I pushed myself to do it, but Yeah, I definitely wasn't getting the results like I would if I'm just focused on the rehab or the flip or the renovation of the project.
Well, that's smart though, to stick to your strengths and let somebody else do the rest. I think that is a skill set that most people don't have initially. You're doing everything. Some of them you're doing poorly, maybe more than one thing poorly. And it's hard though to find partners that are the right partners. I think we've all had partners where they talk a good talk, but they don't really perform. So, and it sounds like you stayed on the path. We'll say that, like you stayed on the path. It's really easy to go, that's too hard. I'll just do it. I'll just do it myself. So did you ever have that thought hit you?
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Yeah, do everything yourself. I can do it
Hmm.
better than everybody
Everybody
else.
else. Hmm.
Yeah,
That,
and maybe I can, but that's really not the point. The point is, what are your goals? What do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? If you have big
mhm,
lofty goals, there's that saying, it's lonely at the top. I John Maxwell, I agree with what he says. That is complete BS. It is
mhm,
not lonely at the top. No one does anything great in life
mhm,
by themselves. You think you could start a family by yourself
mhm,
and do a phenomenal job? And that's not to I'm not going to get in that subject of single moms or single dads, things like that. But like, they still have a community around them.
mhm,
You can't build anything great by yourself. And I got stuck, Robert Kiyosaki's cash quadrant, right? You've got employee, solo business owner, and investor. Well, I
mhm.
was stuck in the solo business owner
Yeah.
for a long time.
Mhm,
I did that with my engineering
mhm,
business of one. I was doing everything. Even when I first started flipping and doing buy and holds, even in Nashville, before I started partnering up with people, do everything myself. It
mhm,
just, you kill yourself. Your life becomes completely out of balance. And then things start, I like to say, you get cracks in your life, whether it's your
mhm,
relationships,
mhm,
your spiritual life, your personal life, relationships, and business. They all start to suffer because we all have
mhm.
only 24 hours a day. And if we're stretched too thin, everything's going to suffer. And I've been through that. I every time I start a new business now, I'm looking at, okay, who's going to align with this mission? Who has the
Mhm.
skills that I don't have? Who has the values that line up with mine? I've been through this too many times to one, want to do it myself. Everything in life is so much more fun to do
Yeah.
with other people.
Mhm,
But at the same time, if you want to do something great, something way beyond what you could even possibly imagine doing yourself, that's when you need to find partners, people to share
mhm.
this with, go on this journey with.
Let me ask you then this question. Where do you start to look for those partners? Like going back to our previous conversation, we don't always get it right. So do you have a process or do you just silently vet people out there? How does that work for you?
Yeah, I'm kind of an introverted person.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people on podcasts tend to be introverted, but when we find things we love to talk about,
Mhm,
we can just go on and on. Like real estate, mindset, I can
mhm,
just talk about this for hours and hours and hours. And so I've been able to form relationships over the years, and it's never been like, what can I get from this person?
mhm,
Anytime I form a relationship with somebody, I look at it the opposite way. How can I help this person? How can I be of service to this person? There's no other motive. I'm not trying to seek out people to see what I can get from them. I
mhm,
seek out people to see how I can serve them. And so I still go to the RIAs. I am a part of a mastermind group, and I love masterminds. And for people that aren't familiar with them, essentially it's just a group of people. It doesn't have to be all real estate. Hopefully it's not all real estate, people just from all walks of life that have similar dreams and values to get towards something, to do something more in their lives, to grow, to give. And so I just put myself in masterminds. I go to the RIA meetups. I'm active on Facebook groups. And so I'm
mhm,
just meeting a ton of people. And my first reaction anytime I meet somebody is, how can I be of service to this person?
mhm,
Can I help them with what I'm really good at? Structural engineering, construction, analyzing deals, just or just have a conversation with them. And I never look at somebody first of how can I join them with business. So when I put together a business, and I just started a new business the past couple of weeks, and what I did with the partners on this, one guy, that's why I had mentioned before we got on, I'm actually not in Nashville right now. I'm in Eastern Pennsylvania. Well, I'm actually living with this guy and his family for the next couple weeks because we're doing kind of like an incubator for this new business that we're putting together. And this guy, he doesn't know real estate very well, but he knows how to run businesses very well at a very high level. And that's not my expertise right now. My expertise is real estate. And so got him on board, got another guy on board in Florida that I met years ago. He actually was a former business partner of a guy that I used to be a business partner with. And that's how I had met him. And him and I have just stayed in touch over the years. And he is just phenomenal at scaling businesses as well. Very strong ability to do rehabs all across the country on a large scale. And so we're bringing him in because he's systems and processes. He has that down to a T, which is not my forte either. And so aligning people up, different skill sets, we all have very similar values because I've known these two guys for years now, but I've never thought of going into business with them until I had this idea for this new business. And I was like, this guy would be great. That guy would be great. And essentially you're forming a team like the movie Ocean's 11, right? You need a person for this, a person for that. And that's kind of how I do it now. I'm like, okay, this is my mission. This is what I want to accomplish. Who's going to be the right person to put in the right place? And you do the same thing every day, whether you realize it or not. Like when you do real estate, you need to start an LLC. So you need a lawyer, you need an accountant, a CPA, because you got to do your taxes. Hopefully people are doing their own taxes. I was smart enough to know that right away, but
yeah, that one I figured out real quick.
Yeah. So it's partnerships, but also on top of partnerships, it's who you're adding to your team. There's a book, the Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Keller. And that book, I remember that's like the real estate Bible to me. Like I remember when I first read that and he was talking about putting teams together, and that just has stuck in my mind ever since I read that, because this is a team sport. This is a team game. Like we talked about earlier, you can't do this all on your own. So for me, going back to your question, how I find partners, I just think about the people that I have met over the years who might be interested. And sometimes when I approach people about a business opportunity, they're either not interested in the business or it's not the right time for them. But I'm a spiritual guy. I honestly believe that everything is happening according to plan. So whether people give me a yes or a no, it's happening the way that it needs to happen. And so I always have to keep that in mind as well as I go through this. And it's business, it's not personal. So yeah, that's kind of how I go about finding partners.
That is so interesting, because one of the things I talk about a lot, so I'm kind of a marketing and branding nerd. That is a strength of mine, was always lead generation through a couple of businesses. I tell people I'm a fully recovered introvert, because I used to be that person. And now I think podcasting actually helps with this too. But you get to a point where you honestly just have nothing to lose by going all in and talking to people. But one of the points that I bring home all the time is that one of the most underrated, overlooked marketing strategies is networking. And to your point, you look to see how you can be of service to people, and with the full knowledge that you may not see results that benefit you for 5 or 10 years. It may be this new business that you start, and you think of someone that you've met, you've nurtured a relationship with, but just maybe even on a personal level or a check-in level. How are you doing? I was just thinking about you. And then one day, I do believe in synchronicity and all of that. I think It just lines up. And then you have an opportunity presented to you, but you didn't get there by accident, but neither was it a job or a strategy necessarily that you had. It's just the end result of what you did. So that is so interesting to me.
Yeah. And anytime I have chased money, I have chased, in this business, financial freedom, everybody talks about that.
Mm-hmm.
How do I get my passive income? Why else are we in this? Flipping was great, but it was like having a job. You make money, but the great thing about flipping is you can make some pretty good money and then throw that into rentals.
Right.
But I was always chasing the elusive financial freedom. And it's so funny when you chase money or you chase an idea like that, you're never going to get there.
It's always just right in front of you.
Oh, it is. It is. And so if you're chasing people with the thought in mind, I need to find this person to help me with this, and what you can take from people, and not take in the bad way, but even just what can I get from someone before you think of what can I give to someone, that is completely backward. That's how we think, but it's completely backwards. You need to be of service to people before you can ever expect to receive anything, because when you do that, man, it comes back to you tenfold. And that's how money works too. Like, money, in my opinion, is just energy. And the more you spend it, the more you enjoy it, the more you love it, the better your life is going to be. The less you worry about money, the more money you're going to make. And by enjoying what you do, enjoying, like you said, with networking, meeting people, and just listening to them, understanding them on a personal level, man, there's so many more riches that come out of that. Even if you never end up working directly with the person, it's going to come back at you, and it's going to come back tenfold.
I agree with that. Your referral network grows almost silently because you've been of service to someone else and they mention your name. It might be 2 or 3 or 4 people down the line. But I do believe that all of those things work together. I do believe that, which, since we're talking about mindset, I need to ask you about your Superhero by Design brand. I need to know what that is. And what is your superpower other than being a structural engineer? What's your superpower?
Yeah, well, superpower, I'll jump into that first. My superpower, so I was always told that I had like ADHD, and I know people get diagnosed so often, and they use that as a crutch. They use that as an excuse. Well, that has given me the ability to focus to a point that when I focus on something, I get totally immersed and lost within it. And I can't focus on anything else but that. My wife used to always get on me, like, she couldn't break my focus. And she's like, why aren't you paying attention to me? And I would be focused on whatever I was doing or whatever was going on, to a point that it would be so hard to switch my focus. But taking that ability and really refining it, working on it, and using it, man, I can sit down and I can study something, or I can learn something, or I could work on something 6-8 hours later. I don't even know what time it is. It could be the middle of the night. And I'm like, oh, all right, well, I guess it's time to go to bed. So I would say that's definitely one of my superpowers, is my ability to focus. And another one of my superpowers I actually got from my mother. She passed away about 12 years ago. And from that experience and just the life that she had, everyone talks about legacy, wanting to leave a legacy. Well, my mother left a legacy of love and just being able to connect with people. And that's a legacy that she left that I have taken on. And so any interaction I have with somebody, I want to connect with them. I don't care if it's the person at the grocery store. I don't care if it's the valet person, my banker, people that I meet on the street. I always make it a point to try to connect with people on a human level. And that has just made my life so rich. And it's just my hope that I'm able to just affect people in a positive way, even if it's just a quick hello, walking down the street, something like that. So, and that gets into the whole ACE brand. I always believe that people are born with a special gift, and I call it being a superhero. And the thing that I love about superheroes, they have three pillars. They have a mission, they have an identity, and they have superpowers. And just like a muscle, if we're all born with muscles, but if you don't go to the gym or work out those muscles, they're never going to grow. So everybody is born with this gift, this ability to do something incredible to give to the world. However, if you don't know what it is, or you don't work on building up that power, I feel like you're doing a disservice to your creator. You're doing a disservice in life, because everybody is born as a superhero. They just need to discover who they are, what their mission is, what their superpowers are, and then work on that, grow so that they can give their gift to the world. Because I ultimately believe that's why we're here in the first place.
Say that one more time. So it was mission, identity, and what was the third one?
Superpowers.
The superpowers. Okay. So I asked you about that without even knowing that. I do believe people have superpowers, and I think often they don't know they do. Did you ever talk to someone and say, you're really good at this, I think this is your thing? And they go, what? That, for them, it's such a natural thing. They don't even think about it.
Yeah. You ask people, I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan.
Me too. Me too.
And the one thing that he always asks is, what do you want? And then he follows it up with, what do you really want?
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I went to a Tony Robbins event, I think the first time like 7 years ago or so, my mentor at the time told me to go. And I was like, who's this guy jumping up and down? Like, this is weird. These people are weird. But I went, and he asked that question, and I didn't know what I wanted. I think most of us don't know what we really want in life. We answer based off of what we think other people view that we should live. Like, I lived for my parents. I followed their exact law when it came to, having a life, being a structural engineer, then getting married and having a family. And then I can go off into the sunset, right off into the sunset, and life would be great. Well, guess what? That never happened, because I was completely miserable working as a structural engineer full time. And that's why I got into that construction business, because if you live someone else's life, or how they think you should, and it could be your parents, it could be your family, it could be your community, it could be just something you picked up on watching television as a child. If you're not living your life for yourself, you are going to be unhappy. It's as simple as that. So asking yourself just the basic Tony Robbins question, what do you want? What do you really want in life? And once the first time I answer that question, it's like a muscle, going to the gym. It wasn't a very good answer. And it didn't, it wasn't like, oh, I know this and my life is set. This is the direction I'm going to go. You have to go like the gym over and over again and build up that muscle of asking yourself, what do I want in life? How do I want my life to be? That's why so many coaches and things like that, they start off with your life vision. What's your life? If you could, no restrictions, you can have a paintbrush and paint the scene of your life. What is it that you want? But most of us have never even stopped for 2 seconds to ask ourselves that question. Well, what do I want? Not what everybody else wants of me. Because once you start asking questions like that and you start working on yourself, now you're taking the steps to actually taking back the power of your life, the control of your life. And once you start doing that, you start to feel empowered. You start building up momentum. And from there, man, you can knock down any obstacle and do whatever you want in your life. And you know what? The cool thing is, when you start growing and doing that, you naturally want to look outward and give outward. I honestly believe that. And once you start doing that, helping others, being of service to others, man, your bucket of happiness, bucket of life is just overflowing at that point.
So many people look at their life as the way it is today. Maybe they're stuck in a situation they'd rather not be in, or I don't exactly know how to put this, but they've built their life around what their current reality is, instead of saying, not to be mean or anything, but what is it that I want my life to look like? And am I living my life for someone else? Whether that's for a parent, or you've got the responsibility of taking care of someone else, or maybe you've made it your responsibility to take on that. And I think we do that a lot of times. Maybe it's not meant for us to do that, but somehow we feel this need to do that. But I think you have to first ask that question. And that's a really good question about what do you really want? And just for reference, there's quite a few years between your age and mine, but I actually have Tony Robbins cassette tapes, which for years, I couldn't get rid of them because that was my first foray into Tony Robbins. And then I went one day, who am I kidding? I'm never going to listen to these cassette tapes again. And I got the bright idea to write them and say, hey, I've got all these cassette tapes. Would you trade them in for CDs? They went, sure. I mean, who knew? But I think you can't figure out and get yourself in a different place. We'll talk about mindset here. You have to change your mindset around your situation. And then see, instead of saying, well, I can't do that. Well, what would it look like if I could do that? What would I need? Do I need people? Do I need a different situation? And once you open up your thoughts to how can I make this happen, then your whole world changes.
Yeah. Our brains are wired to answer the questions we ask it. Tony always says, ask, if you want better results in your life, ask better questions.
Better questions. Yeah.
Yeah. If somebody wants to lose weight and they ask themselves the question, like, why can't I lose weight? Well, your brain's going to naturally say, well, I'll give you all these reasons why you can't lose weight, instead of changing the question to something more empowering. Like, how would my energy levels be if I lost 10 pounds? Well, your energy levels will go up. You'll be able to spend more time with your kids, playing with them, or have more energy for your interactions, whether it's at your business or your spouse or social engagements. And so, yeah, like you said, when you start asking, I love the how questions. I love the open-ended questions, how questions, what questions. Those are so much better than the yes or no or disempowering questions that we tend to ask ourselves.
When you talk to other real estate investors that are having problems, mindset problems, and everybody has them, maybe they're stuck, they can't move past the next whatever that thing is. How do you help them with their mindset? I mean, you have a good grasp on it, and I've studied mindset and those similar types of things for years. And like you, I believe that to a certain extent, we are where we are because of a certain amount of synchronicity. But I also think if it's a bad place you are, that you can ask yourself different questions and figure out a way to get out of that. So when these investors find themselves in these deep, dark places, what is your advice to them? Because everybody's been down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking that. That's a phenomenal question. One thing you got to do is get leverage when you talk to people. And the easiest way to get leverage is pain, asking painful questions, get them to associate whatever they're doing with the pains in their lives, whatever they're trying to overcome. But pain is only temporary. To have lasting change, you have to have pleasure. Tony talks about this, pain versus pleasure. So you also have to ask them questions about, well, what if I did change this? Like, how would my life look? What are the things that I'd be able to do? How would I get closer to my goals? And then you start attaching pleasure to it. And our minds are like records. I'm a big record guy. I love collecting records. Nashville is phenomenal with record stores. But our minds play like records. So we keep telling ourselves the same story, or we give the same meaning to past events. And just like a record, what you need to do is interrupt that record. And the easiest way to interrupt the record is to scratch it. Because once you scratch a record and you try to play it, it's never going to play the same way again. So when I work with people, and I actually do a lot of mindset events and things like that, where we work with people to rewire their brains. I'm really big on the nervous system and rewiring our brains and our bodies. And so I do what are called pattern interruptions. When someone tells a story that they've told in their mind a million times, or have told people a million times, I can't do this because of that. And it's usually disempowering language too. You can start to see their body, their shoulders start to drop. They look down, Their voice gets a little bit deeper. Their breathing is more shallow. And so I can start to see these signs of these people getting into this trance of this story they tell themselves. And then usually I'll do a pattern interruption just by asking them a crazy question. I love humor. I'm a big humor guy. So I'll ask them something to kind of make them laugh. And just the act of breaking that pattern when they're getting into that story, that by itself starts to change things. And once you break that pattern, there's a void. Then you can start filling in that void with good, positive, uplifting things. Like you said, noticing things about people that they don't notice in themselves. So anytime I work with someone and I'm breaking a pattern, I have to fill in that vacuum right after breaking that pattern. So I will throw in something that I've noticed about them. They might not have noticed about themselves. And by doing that, and then linking the pain and the pleasure, and then also looking at their future life and all of that, and working there, and having them come up with the solutions themselves, because I can tell them a million things, but if they don't tell themselves the solutions and get themselves out of their own hole, their own pattern, it's not going to be nearly as effective. So I just do those little techniques here and there. And I've been doing this for quite a while. And it's a way that I was worked on myself when I went through coaching and worked with mentors, first through the Tony Robbins program, but then breaking away and working with other high performing coaches, just breaking those patterns, breaking those stories, changing the meaning. We literally are rewiring our brains. And once that happens, then your life is forever changed. You are not the same person, and you can move forward in life the way that you want to. And sorry, my calendar just jumped up at me. I apologize about that. I completely just did a hard stop. But yeah, that's usually how I work with people when they hey, real estate investors are just like anybody else. And it's the 6 inches of real estate between our ears that is the key to having a successful life, as opposed to living a life of misery or just scarcity, really.
So interesting. I meant to ask you this early on. So how did you get tagged ACE? Is that a name you gave yourself, or did someone else give you that?
I was given that name. That is my superhero name.
It's your superhero name. Okay.
Back then it was called a champion name. I went to an immersion event similar to Tony Robbins. It was a men's event, and we got to box. We use boxing. Physical exertion is a great way. David Goggins today is like the poster child for physical fitness when it comes to working on mindset. And we worked with some UFC fighters, and specifically one of them, he's a Hall of Fame UFC fighter. And we were in the ring. We were doing what we call the champion round at the end of the event. We had been prepping for the last few days, learning boxing moves, doing mindset, early morning hikes, things like that. Really fun, grueling stuff. And then we ended it with a champion round. And let's just say the guy wasn't he wasn't holding back a whole heck of a lot. And it was a 5-minute round. And for anybody that's been boxing or have done anything like that, 5 minutes is an eternity. And so I'm going around, I'm doing the moves they taught us. He's blocking them. He hits me back in the stomach, knocks the wind out of me. I fall to my knees, and I am just so disoriented. I kind of stumble to get up because everyone's like cheering me on. They're like, get up, get up, get up. And I'm just so dazed. I'm like almost blacking in and out at this point. And he's saying something to me, but I can't hear anything. It's all white noise. And he's saying something. He's like, flex, flex. And I'm like, what? Why would I flex right now? He's like, just flex. And I was like, okay. So I flex, and this is called an anchor, a power move. And I love teaching this to people. It's like a superhero move, right? Every superhero has their move. And he told me to flex. And immediately when I did that, I had this kick of adrenaline just rush through my body. And I just felt it was like a second wind instantly. And I was able to finish the round. I was boxing again. I thought I was out for the count. I never experienced or felt something like that before. So long story short, after the champion round, we had this celebration where we had a fire and everybody was around the fire, and we were going around giving everybody champion names. And everybody had seen where I had started and where I had finished through the event. And everybody was like, it's Ace. It's Ace. And I was like, hey, I'll take that name. That's a super cool name. And then I was like, well, why Ace? Well, come to find out, World War II fighter pilots would get the name Ace when they shot down a certain amount of enemy planes. And it was because in this, you think of a dogfight where these planes are just flying around, everybody's shooting at everybody. It's complete chaos, bullets flying, planes flying, hitting each other. But at the same time, these fighter pilots, in that chaos, like they were the eye of the storm. There's all this chaos around them. They were able to maintain a focus to a point that they were able to shoot down all of their enemies, to the point that they shot down enough of them to be called an ace. And that's what they saw in me. I had mentioned earlier, one of my superpowers is focus. They saw a focus and a drive in me that I was able to compose myself, keep myself calm when all chaos, all craziness is going on, and just stick to my mission, shoot down my enemies, and fulfill the mission. And so that's how I got the name Ace.
I knew it was going to be something like that. I meant to ask you earlier, but when we got on this whole train of thought, I thought, boy, I cannot finish this out without asking him that. That's so interesting. So let me ask you this final question. What does your freedom lifestyle look like? What does it look like when you're designing your freedom lifestyle?
Oh man, now that's a great question. Yeah. Jocko Willink talks about this in his book, Extreme Ownership. And this has stuck with me ever since I read that, but phenomenal book on mindset and just owning your life. And he said, the more disciplined you are in your life, the more freedom you have. And so what I teach and what I preach is daily habits, daily rituals. My days are very structured. And you can imagine with my focus, when I get thrown a curveball, that's can be pretty difficult for me at times. However, that's why I get up at 5 a.m. to make sure I can get my daily rituals, at least my morning rituals, taken care of, be able to work through the day, get myself aligned, and then I have rituals at night. But I would say the more disciplined you are, the more habits that you've put in your life. This morning before coming on this show, I ran 10 miles, not because I love running 10 miles. Trust me, I'm 40 years old. My body, I haven't trained like that in a while, but mentally I've trained myself. My body is catching up because I haven't run distances like that. But, I always have to do something physical in the morning, whether it's going to the gym, going for a run. I took a cold shower, and here in Pennsylvania, we are on a well. So it gets very cold. Yeah. Yeah. My place in Nashville, the summer comes around, those cold showers don't get that cold if you're on city water. Here, being on well water, it's probably a good 46, 47 degrees. And that is really cold. So but you build up those muscles. I read every morning. I read my Bible every morning. I do meditation every morning. I write. I have all these questions that I ask myself and answer every morning to get myself aligned properly. And the more disciplined you are in your life, the more you're able to do these habits. And trust me, I wasn't a physical guy before I started this whole thing. And if I miss a workout, I feel like I'm off for the day. I feel like a piece of me is missing because I have made it part of my identity. I have made it a part of my lifestyle. And once you start doing all of these things, everything between your morning and your evening rituals, you can handle. Because if I can run 10 miles this morning and then jump into a freezing cold shower, I can do anything because I had just already won the day. And then at the end of the night, I set myself up. I take a nice warm shower at the end of the night because I know how to get my body ready so that I can maximize the amount of sleep. I only get 6 hours, but I don't need more than 6 hours of sleep. That's 4 ultradian cycles, 90-minute cycles of the sleep cycle. I just need 4 of those and I'm good to go. So I've been able to up my standard in life, and it's all because of my habits and rituals.
Interesting. I do believe that, like in Atomic Habits, they talk about habit stacking. And I think it seems like you've kind of done that. And I know for me, if certain things, when it comes to breaking a bad habit, let's say if you have a bad habit, if you can attach it to something else, I think it's easier to install the new habit. So all of these things work. It's just connecting all the dots. It's connecting all the dots and figuring out what works for you. Well, this has been such a great interview. I love all the mindset stuff. I can kind of geek out on that forever. I know you have a podcast. I'm going to put the link to the podcast. I always do the same thing. I always listen to an episode or two of someone's podcast before I have them on. It gives me an idea of who they are and about the flow. And I think I just like to be informed, kind of like you do. And I know you have a book also. It's the same title, correct?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's easy. Superhero by Design, book, podcast, website. You can find more recent resources on the website.
Yeah. So
yeah, just Google Superhero by Design and you'll be able to find everything.
I will put all of the links down there so that you can connect with Matt. But if they have a burning question they want to ask you, is there an email that you want to leave so that they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, for sure. It's ace@superherobydesign.com.
Okay. I'll put that in the show notes, and then be sure and check out all of his offerings. He's really got some good stuff. And I think we kind of think along the same lines there, Ace, for sure.
Oh yeah. No, and I love talking real estate. Real estate is amazing. It's a phenomenal vehicle to get you to where you want to go in life. But like we've talked about for most of this episode, if your mindset isn't there, that's what's stopping you from getting to where you want to go in real estate.
100%. Well, thanks again for coming on the show. And thanks to all the listeners that come out week after week. And if you love this show, and I know you did, please share this show and leave us a rating and a review over on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. It helps people to find us, and I would really appreciate it. So I will see you all same time, same place next week. Bye for now.